Most companies have a GTM strategy, but very few have a GTM that actually gets the money. If your go-to-market feels like a series of broken spreadsheets and missed targets, it's time for a system update. Welcome to GTM, get the money live. I'm Chris Ryan and I'm Liability, your host, and we're here to install the operating system for your revenue. We're moving past the theory and getting into the high-stakes execution of what it takes to scale in 2020 fast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome out to GTM, Get the Money Live. It's been a couple weeks, been traveling, but excited to be back on the air. So today's a little different. GTM Get the Money is all about going on the offense. Typically, we talk about hunting, closing, scaling, all the fun ways to bring revenue in and make sure that the revenue stays in the business. Today's guest brings the defense, which I'm pretty excited to share with you. And if you think about it this way, go-to-market is how you get the money into the organization, hence the name. It wasn't a surprise that we named the show that. She is how you keep the money. Yeah. And I'll give you a little context to my guest, Deb Best, who has the best name ever. But there's really no point in having world-class revenue architecture if the bucket is leaking. And sometimes that leaks hundreds of thousands of dollars through my conversations with Deb. And it's usually due to, or it can be usually due to compliance lawsuits, toxic top earners, which is a fun topic to talk about, missing insurance riders. She is an HR superstar. This is going to be a super fun show. Without further ado, let me introduce Deb Best.
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Good to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You want to tell us a little about your life, your bio, anything you want?
So I've been an HR practitioner for 37 years. I started my career at General Electric in '89 and was inside HR until about 17 years ago when I started my own consulting business. And General Electric was a great training ground because they were bleeding edge strategic HR. HR was a critical function at General Electric. We were embedded with operations. You know, it was mostly manufacturing businesses when I was there, and we were part of the manufacturing team. We went to, daily manufacturing meetings. That's the way to be a strategic HR leader or staff member. Supporting leadership is that you're embedded in the business. You're not just sitting in your office processing benefits and payroll transactions. While they're important, that's what most people think HR, particularly small business owners who've never worked in large organizations. They think it's benefits and payroll, health and happiness.
I like the embedded. I'm surprised that an organization as big as GE wouldn't keep that separate. Like they would bring you in and embed you with teams, which I think is impressive.
Yes.
A testament to GE.
Yes, absolutely.
So anyway, if you're new to the show, we always ask a big question and we talk back and forth about ways to solve revenue. At the end of the day, we're all about solving revenue one way or another. And it's about bringing in revenue for growth, but revenue for good. We're trying to bring revenue to good companies so they can give back to those around them, themselves, their families, their employees, the community, everyone. So most founders and CROs view HR as pure overhead, which you just alluded to.
That's correct.
As an administrative expense. To be fair, I probably look at it that way too before speaking with you.
Yeah.
But you argue that people ops is actually a profit center.
It is.
Through loss prevention.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can you walk us through the math? How does playing defense on HR actively protect the company's bottom line?
So when I start working with a client, and I work with clients who have anywhere from they haven't hired people yet, startups, to over 1,000 employees, and a lot of the basics are the same no matter how many employees you have. So when I start working with a client, the first thing I ask is, do you have employment practices liability insurance? And typically it's not something they pay attention to. And usually their CFO or finance person is like, yeah, I think we do. And I said, well, how much do you have? And they said, why is that important? I said, well, like I was trained at General Electric. We had to prevent lawsuits. We had to be perfect.
Yeah.
It was great training, but it's not realistic in the real world, because as perfect as you can be, from treating your employees well, from following all of the myriad of compliance requirements, particularly in the state of New York, it's a very litigious state, as well as federal requirements. You can be as perfect as you can be, and you can still get a complaint filed against you, or you can still get sued. So, employment practices liability insurance is a rider on general liability. And that is huge, because let's say you're, 2 million in revenue annually, 2 to 10 million. If you get sued and you get you have to pay a settlement and/or, compliance fees that total $1 million, that'll kill the business.
Yeah.
So the beauty of employment practice liability insurance is, now, this is not carte blanche for you to just throw caution to the wind and do whatever the hell you want and break the law. But because a lot of the claims that we deal with, there can be false claims. There are legitimate claims. For example, workers' comp. There's a real tendency that I've really been hammering my entire career to, and the employee too. It's like, oh, I don't want to cause a workers' comp claim. No, that's what workers' comp insurance is there for.
Right.
It's there to protect you. It's there to take care of you. God forbid if you get injured. So, with employment practices liability insurance, the goal is always, let's do everything right. Let's treat employees well. Let's treat employees great. Follow all the myriad of compliance requirements in New York State. But, you could get hit with, for plaintiff's attorney, they're the attorneys that work on contingency. One interesting area, I don't know if this is as much a problem as it was 5 years ago. There's so much paperwork in New York State. Wage Theft Prevention Act. You have to have an employee fill out the form and sign it and give them a copy of it, and you have to have it in the personnel file. And if you don't do that right, that's been a real ambulance chaser, if I may say, type of revenue source. And so it's important to understand where all the guardrails are. But employment practices liability insurance, seriously, I had a client. So I have clients in the Northeast, and pretty much all the states in the Northeast, they're just like New York, some of the most regulated states in the nation. And my client in another state, they had a false claim, and they had to go to the Division of Human Rights for that state. And it's really the legal fees that eat up the money. They only had $100,000 in insurance. It ate the whole thing up.
Oh, wow.
And it was just, and I think their revenue is like $3 million.
And this is a false claim, something that they didn't do, that they didn't control, but they had insurance. They just didn't have enough of it.
Correct.
Gotcha.
That's right. So the more the better. I always tell clients.
Okay. I'm thinking to myself whether we have this insurance, and I have no idea. Well, I will find out from our pseudo HR department.
I'll talk to you. Sure.
So, okay, so let's ask a question. So this obviously seems very important. Totally understand the ambulance chasers, because we see them in my world all the time.
Yeah.
But who should every company, like, say you're just starting out, you just filed your LLC.
Yes.
You should get this insurance.
Before you
Is it
hire
expensive?
people.
Like, how much does stuff cost?
It's really interesting. I have errors and omissions liability insurance. I carry $3 million.
Okay.
But that's a layer, right? So I work with employers. It's not that I want them to foot the bill for my liability. I carry a lot, but it's really for them. It's to protect them, because when all is said and done, the claim's going to go to them as the employer, not to me.
Is it underneath or is this a separate policy?
It's not a separate policy. It's a rider.
Okay. Oh, it's a rider.
It's a rider on your general liability.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So we're not talking like huge money here.
No,
right,
I mean,
do
I pay? I think I pay for my E&O for $3 million. I think I pay $2,500 a year.
Okay. So so negligible compared to your point. Like, if you can't control when you get sued for something that you didn't do.
That's right.
This is all insurance, right? Like, but I think that's good to know. So So you wrote it down as EPLI. Is that how it's?
Employment Practices Liability Insurance, EPLI. That's
Okay, I'm
right.
not going to say the long version, but yes,
That's okay.
The EPLI. Okay.
right.
So that is a very good way to save money. The $1 million thing was shocking, right? And I understand like a lot of the legal fees and the things that get
Legal fees.
exorbitant like very quickly. But is there a minimum? Because you said 100,000 was potentially too low in your example. Like, should they be at $1 million? I guess it's the size of the company, but
You know, it is the size of the company. But again, you know, there's no scaling. There's no continuum of if you only have 10 employees, you're only going to get sued for this much. You're in business, you're going to get sued. Doesn't matter how many employees you have. And again, I haven't ever bought this insurance, and I don't know the mechanics of it. I believe it is based on employee count, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, it's got to be, right? Yeah.
Right. So I also want to say for the record, HR is not just protecting the company from losing money. It's much more robust and strategic than that. I mean, if you're treating your employees well, if the head of the organization isn't a jerk, if you have a good culture, but you can't have a good culture if the head of the organization is a jerk.
Right.
That it's so much more than that. But in terms of, we're talking about as a profit center, saving money, that's the number one.
So this is tactical, right? Like, get this done. Don't, again, I'm probably going to buy some today if we don't have it.
Right.
We probably do.
I'm sure you do.
It's just not my department.
I understand.
If you're looking, HR people, I do. So New York State. So no, and I'm with you because again, I've known you for a little bit, and I'm learning more about the HR world. And I originally was like, it's an administrative cost. Do you need it as a certain size business?
Yeah.
So get the insurance, or at least get a quote and figure out what that is. But
Correct.
I want to touch on something because you mentioned this in our pre-interview. You said HR is much more than this, and toxic culture, toxic people. So obviously it makes sense from top down, she or he, if you have a bad owner, which we all deal with bad owners at times.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we're not bad owners. But what about toxic employees? Because I think you quoted the brilliant jerk
Brilliant jerk.
The toxic that set it up for us, Deb.
So one of my favorite books, and it's not just because it has asshole in the title, The No Asshole Rule by Bob Sutton. He is a renowned Stanford professor, and basically he is the one who coined the term brilliant jerk. So, in my experience, it started at General Electric. I remember distinctly, we had a sales manager who was great at bringing in sales, but he would literally eviscerate anybody internally if you didn't get his deliveries done on time, if you worked for him. I mean, he basically was horrible.
Yeah.
And they refused. It was really interesting because GE would not only do performance reviews, they would also evaluate us on did we walk the talk of the values? He didn't, but they wouldn't get rid of him because he made money.
Yep.
And that is, in the long term, you're leaking money, because the turn in his department was horrific. I mean, and if you talk about the cost of turnover, it used to be lower. Now it's pretty much, it's the salary that the employee was making. So let's say you had a salesperson who was making $100,000 a year. To replace that person, to recruit, hire, the payroll, the actual cost of a recruiter, the training, it can be equal or greater than the salary you were paying them. So, that's I think, an extreme example of a toxic employee, but it's that brilliant jerk. When it's really interesting when I've talked about this issue, and I do presentations periodically. People love that term. They understand exactly what I'm talking about and what Sutton is talking about, the brilliant jerk. So, again, when I'm on a panel and they're talking about culture, I'll raise my hand and go, yeah, that's great. But if your owner, your CEO is an asshole, it's not going to work.
Right. Then what's the book called? The No Asshole?
The No Asshole Rule.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Deb seems like this very nice, well-spoken. She likes to swear. It's okay. No rules.
I'm from New York City, and my daddy's a Marine.
That's okay.
So there you go. That's what you get.
Well, thank him for his service. Okay. So how does how do you address this? So you have this toxic culture, and I think we all are accustomed to toxic culture. And we've talked about these heroic salespeople throughout the show. So there's been different episodes where we've talked about top earners. They do whatever they want. They don't care. You don't want to get rid of them because they were top earners. But if you add a level of toxicity in there and it's undermining culture, then you have just a ticking time bomb, and you're losing people. You're not just losing one people. You're probably creating like just massive
ripples, cancer
throughout the organization.
It is. That's exactly how I see it. It's cancer. And the work that I do, it's usually cancer surgery, because most leaders, most owners, they don't know how to get rid of a cancer like this.
Yeah.
So they just hope it'll go away, or they'll just hope, they'll see the light and reform themselves. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
But you'll come in and you'll facilitate and you'll help exit that employee in a professional way, and then hopefully rebuild the culture.
Right.
Okay.
So, and there are and I also coach these folks, and the key to the success of a coaching engagement with somebody like this is they have to be self-aware. They have to say, yep, they have to have a breakdown and say, yeah, I've got to stop doing this.
So are you coaching the leaders, or are you coaching the toxic people?
Everybody.
Okay.
Everybody. But if you're dealing with a brilliant jerk and they don't think there's anything wrong with them, then it's time for cancer surgery. Then it's time to get them out of the organization.
No, it makes sense.
But it's not just terminating them. It's also holding them accountable. So it can, the surgery can take a lot of forms that way.
Interesting. I mean, it's just, I mean, have you ever turned around a brilliant jerk?
Yes.
Really?
I have.
That is surprising.
I have.
So tell me about that.
So I'm a recovering asshole. And so is my daddy, because, we live in the Albany, New York area, and, the way I was raised, I mean, New Yorkers yell, we curse a lot. We're very direct. We can be scary. And, I love doing what I do, so I can't be a jerk while I'm doing the work I love. So I have had a lot of training, a lot of coaching, a little bit of therapy to really keep myself in check and really modulate my communication style. But I think that really makes me, frankly, good at what I do, because I really, my heart goes out to them, because, I was too, but this is 37 years later. This is in my 20s. But being that way really held me back at times from a career standpoint.
Well, you touched on something very important, is that they're open and willing to be accountable. They're open to learning, and they're coachable, because some people just aren't coachable.
No.
And if they don't possess that quality,
I don't.
That's
and
when you're excising.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're
I do that all the time. But when I get approached by a prospective client and they say, we have this brilliant jerk, we want you to work with them, the first thing I'll ask is, do they want that? Because, most people, it's like, wow, you want to buy me 40 hours of coaching? Yay, that's like a present. I'll take that. I love being coached. But if the person is not willing, or they don't see themselves that way, I will very politely say, I don't want to waste your time or money, because it's just going to be like, like
dive bomb.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Flushing it away.
Okay. Well, it's cool. It's cool you've turned these things around before. I mean, that's impressive. Okay. So let's bring this back to revenue and how it's applicable to the show. So EPLI, you obviously need the insurance. You could save the business from closing for something that's not your fault. Let's pretend nothing's their fault. You have toxic culture, who was at least the cost of their salary, and likely
the turn. Each employee turn. Each employee turn. Absolutely.
So exponential cost.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is how we keep the money, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right.
So you mentioned one thing a second ago, and I think we talked about this in the pre-interview as well, is that leaders, owners, leadership teams, whatever, just depending on the size of the organization, ignore the problem. So like they have this like ostrich problem where they just think something very serious potential is going to go away, like the toxic person is going to get better.
Yeah.
But what about something more serious? Because you mentioned that some people, I don't say they let harassment slide, but they don't address it.
No, they do let it slide.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So, and I can tell you exactly why. Because everything that I'm talking about in terms of how HR saves money strategically is all these things to address them. They're conflict points, and most humans hate conflict. They're not just like leery about it. They'll literally, that's what causes the head to go into the sand, is they don't want to deal with the conflict of having to handle that. And again, I don't start fights, but conflict does not bother me at all. I mean, I'm also a New York State trained mediator. So if everybody would just be trained as a mediator, I think that you wouldn't see that as much. But it's that fear of conflict. And particularly if you're dealing with somebody toxic, it's that fear that they're going to turn on you. So a lot of what I do is I come in. It varies from engagement to engagement. I mean, I come in and I teach them how to handle conflict. I just did, early this week, I just did a short training on conflict facilitation because we're not taught how to handle that,
Right.
especially in the workplace. And that's why I'll always have work.
Well, it's not even that. It's so valuable for you to come, like, have, again, you or someone else in your profession, but having someone come in as a safety valve and be like, you know what?
Yeah.
If I'm somebody who's afraid of conflict, I don't think you and I, either one of us are.
Not us.
But if somebody's afraid of conflict, then you can come in and just act as like an intermediary and then be able to
Yes.
facilitate that.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that like it's I don't know, it hurts me in my soul that people don't address like harassment, like
It hurts me too.
all these super fun politicians right now that aren't being accountable for
Right,
what they're
no.
doing.
But yeah,
that's
but
the
I
whole
think
of the
that
show.
I'm sorry. I think
No,
that's a perfect example, though.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of example in mass media and government of exactly that they don't do anything about it. And you see what happens when they don't do anything.
And it's
about
okay,
it.
right? Like, and I'm like, that's beyond
Right,
unacceptable.
exactly.
So, okay, this is great. I mean, well, that's not great.
No.
This conversation is great. Okay.
So ideally I go in and do very entertaining in-person no harassment training, and we at least tell them where the boundaries are. So I really am a big believer in, can we just prevent it? I mean, even if they don't believe it from a values or moral standpoint, I really hammer home, you can be personally sued. It's not just the employer. It kills your reputation. Everybody carries a TV/radio station with them because we all
Right.
have smartphones, and you can be recorded, and people are being recorded being jerks. And so if the employer isn't dealing with it, that also drags the employer down. So it's not just the toxic jerk that is getting exposed. It's also, why is the employer putting up with this?
Yeah.
Right?
Right. So
It's a reputation thing all around.
So the accountability, and you're right about the recording, because everybody uses AI recorders. We use them religiously, but
That's right.
some states, I think New York is a single.
Yep,
But
only
it was
one. Right. So if
single party
if you and I were having a meeting, we're being recorded, but only one person in the 2-person meeting has to know that there's a recording going on. So, and you can't say to the other person, "Don't record me." The law doesn't allow that
In New York, right?
in New York.
Yeah.
But when I understand why people want to record these type of meetings. I like to record them too. I don't think it's just one person who should have the recording. So I'll always ask, "Are you recording?" Because I'm going to record it too.
We're recording today.
I know we are,
Even though we're live.
but we've notified each other.
Yeah.
But actually, frankly, I really, I don't know. Maybe it's my training. If you're in a meeting and it's really tense, and I understand wanting to defend themselves, I could totally understand the emotional piece of it. For me, I would not lead with recording a meeting. It's just for me, it's a trust thing.
Mhm.
It's like I trust you. I mean, I could have this conversation with you without being recorded, and I'd say
Right.
the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And I have been recorded a couple of times where an employee tries to get me to scream at them.
Oh.
And it's, again, it's my
Like,
training.
are they? Is this part of the program? Like, are they testing you, or are they like just like they're like, oh, the HR lady? Like, no.
I never want to say I've seen everything, because then something weird happens. So this is one of the something weird happens, where there was one instance where the guy was trying to get me on tape it was a handheld recorder. This is how long ago it was. Get me recorded screaming. And what you hear on the recording is he's screaming like a banshee. And I am saying over and over again, "What is wrong? Let me help you." And the only reason my voice is getting louder is that he can't hear me.
Oh.
So, yeah. Exactly.
That's good for TikTok.
Crazy, huh?
You can save that.
Oh, yeah.
So, so this is all great. I mean, again, it's a different way to look at revenue. Obviously, like the mitigation of risk and everything else you're doing. There's a lot of takeaways here. EPLI, obviously toxicity in any way, shape, or form. The ostrich strategy, we'll call it, like don't ignore the problem, bring in a facilitator if you're worried about conflict.
Right. Yeah.
But what is there? A lot of those things you could probably do today, but is there one takeaway you would say for our millions of listeners that you would say do this today among all other things?
I wish you gave me more, but the one big thing is the insurance. If you don't have the insurance and you get hit, it can literally close a business, and that's not what we're here to do.
Okay, so insurance, EPLI. We're not sponsored by any insurance broker, but
no.
If an insurance broker would like to sponsor, please let us know.
Can I also have a bonus one?
You can say whatever.
Job descriptions.
Job descriptions.
They're like watching paint dry.
Yes, they are.
They're so boring. I hate them. However, a lot of compliance flows from a complete and thorough job description. For example, every employer wants to make every employee an exempt salaried employee. And then you don't have to worry about overtime. Whatever, exempt, I've always been exempt. That means exempt from overtime. So, some weeks I work 40, some weeks I work 60. You pay me the same every week. That is a huge vulnerability because it's not just poof. I'm going to give you a manager title and you're exempt salaried. You have to actually do a job that New York State and the feds recognize as an exempt salaried job.
Oh.
And
really?
Right, exactly. So it's the tasks. And I think the big one where people get in trouble the most, in my experience, is so the minimum salary level right now for an exempt in New York State is $1,200 a week. Can never do the math. I think it's like 62 and change. I'd say during the pandemic, I had a friend and colleague. She was just starting up her business and she was hiring people, and she came to me and she said, "Hey, one of my employees told me she's not supposed to be exempt." I said, "Okay, just tell me what happened." She said, "Well, she has a friend at the New York State Department of Labor." And, you always go, "Oh, God." And she talked to her friend because I'm only paying her $35,000 a year. I said, "Yeah, that's not an exempt salary level. So you need to convert her to hourly non-exempt, and then she would be eligible for overtime." That happens all the time. And she was so lucky because she was talking to her friend and not reporting it to the Department of Labor, which happens a lot. So that's
also a big no-no.
A big no-no. Yeah.
That's interesting. I would, and again, I think job descriptions, as painful as they are. Well, you're right. It's like, here's my contract with you,
yes,
Mr. Mrs. Employee.
Right.
Here's how it's going to work. So, and that's something you'll facilitate. You'll help them, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, and you know what? Everybody can use AI to draft a job description. The very strong recommendation is have somebody like me or an employer-side labor lawyer take a look at it, make sure it's compliant. Oh, and a third bonus or second bonus is find an employer-side labor lawyer, at least meet them, at least have a name and an email and a phone number before you need it, because it's really stressful when you're trying to find somebody. And I think another important thing, I could talk about this all day, is that a well-trained HR person knows where the bright line between them and a lawyer is. I mean, I love HR law and regulation. I know I sound really geeky, but I know the point where I can't practice law without a license. We need to bring a lawyer in.
Gotcha.
And a lot of, I think, smaller companies and entrepreneurs, I don't even think that's on their radar.
No, I don't think we'd know, right? Because we're not trained.
Right. Exactly.
All right. So those are phenomenal takeaways. A lot to do for my company and companies we work with. But okay, in the interest of time, this is excellent. Thank you very much for all the takeaways.
Thank you.
So here's the mystery question. So if you haven't watched the show before, we do a mystery question. Obviously, we talk about pre-show questions before this. This, Deb Best, has never heard. So you say HR is a profit center. If you could personally charge founders a $1,000 stupidity tax every time they try to pull a cheap, illegal HR stunt to save a buck, what specific offense would buy you your beach house, let's say?
My beach house.
So out of one, you get one thing, it's going to cost them $1,000 every time, and you see it all the time.
I think it's the head in the sand stuff.
Ignoring the problem.
Ignoring the problem. Or entrepreneurs, and I think I gave you an example in our pre-interview, entrepreneurs, when they actually have done something wrong. So it's kind of like workers' comp. So I told you a story about there actually was a legitimate act of harassment, and the company did not take care of it. This was before I joined them as an internal HR person. And the settlement demand was $50,000. And they were adamant that, no, we don't want to do that because then people are going to think we settle. And, I can't, and they're working with a great law firm for 5 years I think it was almost 5 years, something like that. And they just refused. And then it went up to $500,000.
Oh.
And then I came in and I read the depositions and the documentation, and I went to the owner had hired me. And I said, I went to him and his CFO. I said, look, you screwed it up. I mean, they hadn't had an head of HR for 2 years. You screwed it up. You didn't take care of it. You're lucky that's all she was asking for. So they actually spent $500,000 in legal fees. They didn't have to because they didn't want to settle. And I negotiated it back down to $50,000. So I want to emphasize there a lot of things happen where the employer has fallen down on the job, and it is their responsibility. So that's where I would earn all my money, because literally I would, in my, getting ready for my annual performance review, I would literally list all the money I saved in the performance year.
Oh.
And some years it was $1 million. I mean, also not using, and we have a great friend who is a wonderful recruiting consultant. I've been working with him for 20 years, but it would be like hiring, saving a recruiting fee and avoiding legal fees. I mean, when you get a complaint, the law has changed very much, but back when they had to come and file a complaint with you, the employer, and then with the Division of Human Rights. And a big source of pride for me was if it got to that level, and it usually didn't, because I was in charge of employee relations for the company. So during my tenure, it was a source of pride that we didn't get to that level. But again, you get things fall through the cracks. I mean, it was a 13,000 employee company nationally. So the source of pride was I would go to one of these Division of Human Rights hearings if it got to that point. And if we hadn't done anything wrong, I had all of my ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And so that in and of itself, if you look at a $500,000 settlement demand, that's before it goes to jury trial. That, that's a lot for a large corporation like, Tesla. They actually, that's a cost of doing business. They don't care, but small business owners like us, that kills the business.
Store closer. Yeah.
But, the fact that I could get it resolved at the agency level, great source of pride. Again, I saved you all this money.
I got to tell you, I walked in this interview like very optimistic. Now I'm like a little bit scared.
Sorry.
It's okay. So, because it's very helpful, because again, it's one, if you ignore the problem and you have the problem. Two, there's likely a level of ignorance. Like some of us, we just don't know.
They don't know.
Like whether you're crossing legal lines or what to do.
They don't know.
So you come in fractional support.
Correct.
Where can people find you? Like if they need these services, which it sounds like all of us do, like where can they find you? Like LinkedIn or email? Your website? I'm
on LinkedIn. My website is debbest.com, DEBBEST.com. I can't take credit for it. My husband, it's my husband's last name, but it's a great name. And that has all my contact information on it. Also has, describes a little bit more about what I do. Thank you for asking.
That's great. All right. DebBest.com, 2 B's, DEBBEST. We'll put it on the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been another episode. Deb, thank you for coming on. This is very informative.
Thank you.
A little scary, but I think it's helpful for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
GTM Get the Money Live. We'll see you next week. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen.
We go